Minding My Business, the CEO story with Ramesh Menon and Rishi K.
Hello. With laws being repealed and world leaders acknowledging the climate crisis in COP26, the world seems to be in a state of flux. Welcome to a show that keeps it nice and stable, at least on the business front. It's Minding My Business, the CEO story. I'm Rishi K, and my co-host, the CEO of Fever FM and Radio 1, couldn't make it this week, Ramesh Menon. And really stressing on that climate change point a little bit. Where I live in Mumbai, the summers are getting warmer, the winters are cooler, if there's a winter at all, and climate change is something we need to take cognizance of. But like I said, in the business world, these business leaders light up our lives, even when there's gloom. Our guest today is co-founder and CEO of India's top online furniture retailer. He and his team have gone out on a limb to provide home comfort to millions of people. Please welcome co-founder and CEO at Pepperfry, Amrish Murthy. Hi, how are you? I hope the family and you are safe and healthy and you've got all your vaccines.
Yeah, we've done with all the vaccines, Rishi. Everybody's safe. It's been tricky last couple of years, but I think we've come through it fine.
Nice. Listen, let me start at the best place, which is usually the beginning. 2012, you launched Pepperfry as a lifestyle e-commerce marketplace for fashion, jewelry, beauty, home products. But then a year later, you make a conscious decision to focus solely on the home and furniture sector. Was it because for that entire year, you kept a watchful eye and narrowed down to what was the best performer and then decided to drop the others? And then in a nutshell, how did you manage to keep your focus or decide that you had to keep your focus on home and furniture?
So, Rishi, whenever anybody starts off, I guess you hedge your bets a little, right? I mean, if somebody were to say that they know exactly what they want to do, let's say 3, 5, 7 years later, they're either geniuses, which are not, or they are not very clear about what they're going to achieve. Now, so when we started off, we hedged a little. So we figured that there's an opportunity for a lifestyle brand out there, a lifestyle marketplace, which sells everything. Very soon we realized that while that market opportunity might exist, your business needs to align very closely with the nature of the market opportunity. Now, we are a marketplace. The only thing I actually ever knew about was marketplaces earlier. And marketplaces involves not carrying inventory. It involves basically doing the business in a highly inventory light, capex efficient manner. But clothing requires you to carry inventory. Stuff like that requires you to carry inventory. And courtesy all of that, we figured that, look, there really wasn't a sync with the objective that we'd set out of being the marketplace in the lifestyle space while continuing to do fashion. So about a year later, and it's the only pivot we ever made, and I think it was good that we made it really early. We said, hey, let's just stop doing the rest of these categories. It was roughly, actually even then it was about half our business, and we gave up half our business, saying that let's differentiate better by focusing on what we are really good at and something which our inherent model fits in perfectly with. And so therefore, we dropped the rest and went for home and living.
Makes sense. What were the special competencies you built to serve the Indian market and bridge those existing gaps in the segment?
So, I'll have to take a step back and basically just call out two things. You might be aware that most of our home and living space in India, while it's really large, almost all of it is unorganized, right? So therefore, people are buying from small shops which really don't provide the variety. They're buying off rough catalogs, and the production of the products that get made, especially in the furniture space, is fairly substandard because it's low scale. Depending on if you get a great carpenter, you get a great product. Don't get a great carpenter, you don't get a great product. So there's no consistency, no standardization of quality, right? So all of these issues exist in the market. In order to tackle them, I think we did 3 things really well. Actually 4, but the fourth one might be a little bit of a stretch, but I'll still call that out. The first is that we built our own supply chain. And I think that was super required because furniture inherently is a local business. And the trick was to disrupt that local business. So if you look at history in India, in furniture, people who manufacture someplace typically only sell within 100 kilometers of themselves. What we decided to do was build a supply chain which allows that manufacturer to sell to a buyer in Meghalaya, right? So therefore, you just disrupted the entire method of doing business in furniture. So building the supply chain was a really good thing that we did. The second thing was that we figured we should be omnichannel. So our thesis has always been that It's the same customer who could be on a laptop at some point in time, a mobile phone at another point in time, or in a mall at the third point in time. Therefore, it's our duty as a brand to interact with him or her, whichever way they wanted to interact with us, right? Rather than play God. So we said we'll be omni-channel. We'll connect with the customer whichever way they want to connect with us. And I think that was a fantastic call. Third is tech. I mean, everything we did was fundamentally comes from our tech roots. We're a tech company, right? So the tech that we built out in the back end, which serves offline, online, the tech that we built out in the front end, which enables customers to see products in their room without even off their mobile phones, rather than even coming into a store. All of that tech is something that we did really well. And then the fourth piece, the one that I wanted to call out, is I think furniture was a boring word, right? I mean, even today in English you say, or in Hindi, ye banda to furniture hai, right? So we wanted to change that. We wanted to make furniture really exciting, and I think that's the fourth thing we've done really well. People look forward to buying furniture, especially on Pepperfry today. And I think these are four things that we did well. Only time will tell whether the confidence that I have in the accuracy of what we've done will pan out or not.
Nice. I like the slogan, the caption, the thought, spark a feeling called home. Now, who came up with that? Was it your agency, one of your marketeers? What was the message you were inherently trying to send out, Ambrish?
So actually, it was a collaborative effort. We were on we were doing a workshop in Goa, which had our agency in it and some of our key senior leaders. And we were all together. We spent about a couple of days, and we wanted to we wanted to verbalize what is it that we want to stand for. What's our mission going to be as a company, right? And therefore, we came up with Spark a Feeling Called Home. So I think everybody was involved, right? What did we want to capture? We wanted to capture that India is only the beginning. Our size and scale is only going to keep increasing in India, and as we do that, the world is our oyster, and we will look to take our business and our business model off outside of India and capture markets across the world over a period of time. So that is effectively it. It basically needed to capture our ambition, and we think that home is not about buying a product. People can be in a home which has no piece of furniture in it, and they can be completely comfortable because it's their home. So it's how do we as a company spark that feeling amongst every consumer that we interact with. That was the funda behind the entire message. And how do we do that across the world? Yeah, I mean, so kind of a very good line. I mean, I love it. It gives me goosebumps every time I hear it.
It's really nice. I have to agree. You've already talked about organizing a very unorganized furniture and home segment. You're making it a success for yourself. But how have you really gone about reducing your per unit shipping costs and making sure that your damage rates are really negligible, Ambrish?
So let me answer the first one, and that's actually an easy answer. What happens as you build out your supply chain, Rishi, is roughly about half the costs that you put into your supply chain tend to be fixed in nature. And this varies a little by industry, but let's just say between 40 to 60% of your costs in most industries tend to be fixed in nature. In our case, it's 45%, right? Now, in that case, as the business grows, you get operating leverage on half the costs that you put in because they don't expand at the same rate, right? And so therefore, your costs of shipping keep coming down. I mean, I don't know whether stats is something that we want to go for here, but just to give an idea, we've reduced it 3.5% over the last 3 years. And that's fundamentally because of operating leverage. The second piece to your question, how did we go about reducing damages? I just think it's a function of how careful you can be in every aspect of your delight to doorstep supply chain, right? Now, and I think that is something of a mantra that we have at Pepperfry. I mean, this concept called NPS. Now, so NPS is Net Promoter Score.
Net Promoter Score, yeah.
It's something that people live and breathe at Pepperfry across all levels of, the delivery chain. If you were to stop a truck of Pepperfries and you were to ask the guy who's driving the truck and the delivery supervisor there, what was your NPS for last month? I guarantee you, he will tell you.
Nice.
It's that mantra that runs across the organization, I think, which has ensured that we have fewer damages, we give a great experience to our customers, all of that works out well.
Yeah, just to add to what Amrish is talking about, an NPS, which is a Net Promoter Score of over 70, means your customers love you. Your company is generating a lot of positive word of mouth from referrals. It obviously hasn't been easy, and they've stuck to their core values to take them to those heights. So you mentioned briefly you are an omni-channel model. You have that. Studio Pepperfry is a very important aspect of that omni-channel model. Tell us about Studio Pepperfry.
Yeah. So, the first Studio Pepperfry came up as an experiment in December of 2014. We had this tiny office on LBS Mall, and we said, hey, you know what? It would be interesting for us to, so to speak, set up a lab where customers can come, engage with our products. My category managers and marketing guys can go meet them, have conversations, and we will understand the category a lot more. That's how it started, right? Soon we realized that customers who were turning up there actually wanted to, place orders on Pepperfry. And we said, you know what, this is a great business model and it will, augment the overall business a lot. So we opened our second studio in Bangalore on 100 Feet Road. It was a small, tiny, at that time, I think 2,000 square feet store, but it was on 100 Feet Road, got a lot of word of mouth for us. Today, Rishi, we own that entire building. I mean, and so it's a, progress. But that's how we started it. That was our first real studio in Bangalore on 100 Feet Road. What are the things we do differently? Our studios don't sell anything. And it feels really surprising to say that. I mean, you go to a studio with 20 grand and you say, you know what, I want to take the sofa home. You can't do that. So our studios don't sell anything. Everything has to be bought on pepperfry.com or on the app, right? And I think that's the best thing we ever decided to do, was never sell anything from the studios. And let me explain this a little. A 2,000 square feet studio or even a 5,000 square feet studio will have at best 150 items of furniture. 150 items of furniture are nothing compared to the 25,000 items of furniture that we have on pepperfry.com at any given point in time, right? Now, the entire business model is about variety. So therefore, why would I let my business be determined just by those 150, 200 items of furniture? And I think that was the thinking. And what it's done is that it's actually opened the entire virtual catalog up to somebody who comes into a Pepperfry studio. The second thing about the Pepperfry studios is the fact that you get qualified advice, right? I mean, so almost everybody who's at the Pepperfry studio is a qualified interior designer or a person who's been in the interior design space forever, right? So therefore, the advice that they give you is very neutral. It's high fidelity, and it helps you do your house up better. And I think these two fundamental things, along with the fact that the ambiance is great, it's warm. If you are, for example, an architect who wants to meet your customers, go drop in at the Pepperfry studio. You'll get free Wi-Fi and a coffee. I mean, it's like the Starbucks of the community, and that was the ethos that we wanted to build with Pepperfry studios, and it's turned out quite well.
Nice. So I want to know about Pepperfry's franchise model, Amrish. What is it about the model that makes it truly unique?
Two things. One is that, what entrepreneurs normally, or let's say first-time entrepreneurs like us normally would do, right? We would look for other entrepreneurs around us because we know that that's how we became successful. And therefore, for us to go understand, let's say, a market afresh is much tougher than us getting an entrepreneur from the market who really understands that market really well, right? So that is the fundamental thesis behind starting up our franchisee program. Our first franchisee was opened up in the outskirts of Bangalore. Now we have, the latest stat is we have 107 studios now, Rishi, across India, 65 cities plus. So we are present in tier 1, 2, 3, 4 towns across India plus metros using the franchisee and the company-owned format. And it's all driven by the fact that entrepreneurs who understand their markets better than us are helping us drive our business in those markets. And I think that is the starting point. The second thing of success is you have a franchisee in a box. That's the way to approach this. So everything the franchisee is expected to do is spelled out very clearly. Even as they're setting up their stores, it's almost as if every element of the store is actually sent to them in a box. So it's franchisee in a box. And then every piece which has a customer touch point, there is a very high level of either training, because the customer will walk into the franchisee outlet. The nature of the experience needs to be exactly the same, franchisees as well as FOCOs. So there's a lot of training. And then the final piece of the customer moment of truth, which is the delivery in the house, that's always taken care of by the Pepperfry supply chain. So there is, and that's constant across the board. So what we've tried to do is all these moments of truth, we've tried to create either train really well or have tons of control over. And ensure that the rest of the experience, the spatial design of the studio, etc., is exactly the same for Pepperfry. So frankly, for a customer, he's agnostic, or she is agnostic as they walk into a franchisee or a company store.
Cool. So it's obvious that you're looking to expand your offline footprint further in tier 2 and tier 3 cities and markets. Is that where the Pepperfry Accelerator program comes in? You want to tell me about that?
Yeah, so the Pepperfry Accelerator program is tailored to people who want to start becoming entrepreneurs, but don't have high amounts of capital to be able to do it. So, and if you ask me, it's the same thesis that we had as we started our marketplace that we are applying on the Accelerator program. So in under 20 lakh rupees, you can actually set up a Pepperfry franchise studio in tier 2 and 3 markets. And the ROIs on this program are like, you make your money back in under 2 years. You basically have an ROI of 30% year on year. So over a 3-year time frame, you're actually doubling your money. So the economics of this work really well. And it's for anybody who wants to take the point of being an entrepreneur, being their own boss, and doing so without having a very high outlay upfront.
Now, all businesses suffered because of the pandemic, except, if you look at things like pathology labs and, pure online. But if you see what businesses have done is that they've been extremely nimble. And your buy on phone program, I imagine, is a prime example of being nimble, coming up with something which is quite innovative. Tell us how it helped you through a difficult phase and what the mechanics of buy on phone were.
Yeah, so why did people go to a Pepperfry studio earlier? They wanted advice. They wanted to be able to trust a person who was, let's say, a live person on the other side, which are things which the purely online experience does not deliver. Right? So as the pandemic happened, all the studios got shut. And we realized that there were still customers in the market who wanted to speak to somebody in detail about the choices that they were making regarding furniture and decor in their house. Now, who better to provide that than all the folks who otherwise would have operated out of the Pepperfry studio? So what we did was we created a product which got done in like under a month, right at the beginning of the pandemic, which allowed for a customer to get mapped to the representative from the studio which is closest to them, and then get the advice from them just like they would have got it in the so to speak offline world. But this was done virtually through Zoom calls and so on, and of course as well through phone calls. And I think that program really worked well, because what it did was it helped customers who still had needs stay connected with us, despite the fact that the pandemic had disrupted supply chains and retail operations across the country. I think it's an example of some folks having thought on their feet and thought well, and we're proud that folks like those are there on the team.
Sweet. So the evolution of your house brands, that's also of particular interest to us. I believe you have 8 distinct house brands now, Amrish, that contribute to 50% plus of your overall business. So I'd like a lowdown on your house brands. What really makes them really special for Pepperfry?
At the simplest level, Rishi, our house brands straddle 2 things: design on a spectrum of design and on a spectrum of price. So if you were to think of an X and a Y axis, one being design, the other being price, our house brands are scattered across high design, high price, medium design, medium price, all of that, right? So what we've achieved with our house brands is, that like thousands of people sell on the Pepperfry marketplace. A lot of them are manufacturers by themselves, but they have no brands to speak of. So it's essentially, before Pepperfry came about, it was fundamentally a commoditized market. You were buying a table, but the table didn't have a name to it. There was no brand associated with it, etc., etc. It's not like clothing. It's not like fashion. It's it's a very different industry. So what we said was, but there is merit to manufacturing. There is merit to the person who's making the table for you. And so therefore, as long as quality standards are maintained, as long as a fundamental functional value for the product is maintained, as long as design statements are still made with the product, we should introduce brands. So our house brands are incidentally brand licensing arrangements. The products are still sold by the manufacturer direct to the consumer, but all of the QC, the entire supply chain, the sign off that the product's good enough to be shipped, all of that is done by my internal teams. So what we have in place is a model which works again with hundreds of manufacturers selling to millions of buyers, with just us creating the ecosystem to enable it to happen. And that I think was the secret sauce behind the Pepperfry secret sauce behind our house brand.
You're backed by capital, which was raised in 6 rounds of funding, Amrish, and now it's official. This is the highest amount of capital raised by an e-commerce furniture and home products company in India. What kind of numbers are we talking about for Pepperfry?
250 million plus of capital raised till now, and I don't think we stopped yet. I think the market opportunity in 3 years is supposed to be $40 billion. I want to make a multi-billion dollar business in a $40 billion addressable market. And I think there are enough great partners out there who are willing to back us, given the fact that we've done reasonably well over the last few years, last 8-9 years that we've been around. And so I don't think this will be the end of it, but we've already raised about 250.
From FMCG to BFSI, e-commerce, you've held roles in general management, in marketing, sales, corporate strategy, product development. What are the learnings from all your previous assignments, Amrish, that proved most handy, that you put to best use, as it were, during the launch of Pepperfry?
So I guess the first learning would be that I should have stuck to one thing and done more of it. But jokes apart, I think, so a few learnings, Rishi. The first one would be that everything is new until it's done by somebody for the first time. Okay, and I think if you are able to pluck up the courage to be able to take that step, normally things get done well, right? That's one thing I learned. I mean, I think it's also helped me through my sense of entrepreneurship, right? The second thing is it's all about being. Whatever you do, you could be like the smartest guy in the room by like several degrees. It's finally, if you got the right people working with you, is when you're going to succeed. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. So I think that was my second learning. The third is that, sometimes, and I don't know whether I'm allowed to use this word, so let me use the euphemism. Sometimes bad things happen. And what really counts is how you deal with them. And whether you have and I love this term, grit, to get past bad times. And if you have them in corporate life, you will bring them in everything you do. Actually, you'll also bring them to your personal life. You'll also bring them to every sport you'll play. It's that thinking of grit. I think these are the 3 things that stuck with me. Hopefully everything works out. It has worked out reasonably.
Of course it has. Now, before we go to lifestyle questions, completely as an aside, why would you call e-commerce furniture and home products company Pepperfry? Talk to me about that.
Okay, so here's where it started. Ashish, my co-founder, and I, we had put 3 words on the whiteboard when we were starting. This is like a mythical whiteboard. We didn't even have an office. So let's say on a piece of paper. We said the 3 words are, we will build a truly Indian company. Both of us are Indophiles. We actually believe that India is fantastic. Right? India is the land of opportunity. We think well, etc. So we said we'll build a truly Indian company. We will build a truly honest company in all interactions with everybody. So we are actually a very direct bunch of people. And people either love Pepperfry management or they hate Pepperfry management. So there's no midpoint of Pepperfry. So we said we'll build a truly honest company. And we said we'll have fun along the way. Now, these are the 3 words. So Indian, honest, and fun. And when we started figuring out, now how do we name ourselves? The first word that came to mind was pepper. And we said, look, that's the reason the West had discovered all these trade routes into India. So pepper is something that India stands for, right? It's also a very honest price. Everybody knows the smell, taste, etc. of pepper. It's not something highfalutin like cinnamon and so on. I mean, it's there on every table. Everybody knows it. But the fun of it, and because it's on every table, it's a little boring. The fun of it only happens when you do the tadka, right? You fry it. And so therefore we said it'd be good to have pepper fry. And remember, one of our ambitions was we wanted to make furniture a really exciting thing, right? I did not want my business to be called, I don't know, Fabulous Furnish, right? I mean, that was not the objective. So we said pepper fry sounds right. It goes with the values that we've set out. And we'll do this. You know, the inside joke as to when Ashish and I both, we figured, okay, pepper fry, the inside joke was both of us are vegetarians. And pepper fry, as you know, is associated with every meat dish out there, right?
Correct.
It's a great joke to have two vegetarians set up a furniture company called Pepper Fry. So, yeah, that's how it happened.
It is, but it sticks. It's really sticky. Wonderful. Okay. You went to DCE, Delhi College of Engineering, for your BE, and you're an MBA from IIM Calcutta. Both are great hubs for music and live concerts. So my logical question is, what kind of music do you listen to? What's an interesting concert or show you attended during your college days or otherwise, or even recently before the pandemic hit? So music and concert.
So what kind of music do I listen to? I'm basically a hard rock fan. I am deeply into all of grunge, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all of the good guys, right? So anything Seattle, anything about insurance company not paying, lots of rain, house blown away, anything grunge works for me. I mean that's my zone. Concerts, lots of college concerts, like lots of them, right? I will not name the bigger bands, but let me just say that I have even delayed my joining at job assignments in order to be able to attend rock concerts in a different city before I join a job.
Wow.
So music's big. Music's also big at Pepper Fry. We have a rock band. It's called Contraband. Yeah. So because it's very interesting, when you do a promotion, right? It's the cost of the promotion is contra to revenue, right? So in our terminology in Pepper Fry, we call it contra. Right? So the band is called Contraband.
Lest you think there were any references to anything else.
It's all cool. It's just contra revenue, therefore contraband. So there's a band in Pepper Fry. So we have a fairly active music scene there. No, it's rock is where I'm at. Yeah.
That's lovely. I've got to say, you're the first CEO who's come on and talked Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and that album of Pearl Jam's 10, which has Black and Alive, is one of my eternal favorites. It's on my top 5.
With Jeremy.
Jeremy.
And I soon realized that Jeremy is not the best, as for me at least, not the best on the album. I think Alive and Black, both of the ones you named, are way better. Yeah.
Awesome. A book that has made or left an impact on you, Amrish?
Oh, so this is an interesting one. I read a lot, Rishi. So a lot of books have made me think. But I think, okay, so there's this book called Don Quixote.
Of course.
Yeah. So this gentleman used to have a very romantic view of the world and wanted to fix things as much as he could and change things as much as he could. And he was unfortunately always tilting windmills on his, donkey, who he thought was a horse, Rosinante. So Don Quixote has been a big influence in my life. I guess I'm also still tilting at windmills whenever I get the chance. The other funny thing is I bike, and my bike is actually called Rosie, after Rosinante. Right? So, and I love her, and she's named after Rosinante. So because I think she has a mind of her own. So yeah. So Don Quixote has had a big influence on me.
Lovely, a biker. A sport you follow, your favorite player in that sport, and why he or she is your favorite?
Football. Big fan of FC Barcelona. And I think my all-time favorite, I'll name 2 players, were Xavi and Iniesta. And the reason why I love them was they were generals. They controlled the game. They were not the ones who scored the goals, but they were the ones who, when they got stuff done right, basically the game was theirs. And I there's something about what they did which empathizes a lot with me, and therefore I'm a big fan of both Xavi and Iniesta.
Superb. Your favorite vacation spot and why you love going there?
So that's a very simple one. It's Ladakh. There isn't a part of Ladakh which I haven't explored. I go there mostly. So I go there with family. I go there solo. I go there biking. I basically just get onto a place and then camp out there. Ladakh is my favorite place in the world. I think it's. Why do I like it so much? I think I'm a bit of a closet sociopath, and there are very few people in Ladakh, and so therefore it gives me an opportunity to just hang by myself, and that's a great feeling. And of course, the scenery is awesome. The place is just beautiful. So Ladakh's the place.
Final question: a business leader who you find inspirational and why you've been impressed by him or her?
So Mr. Patel, I think Karsan Bhai Patel would be somebody that I've from fairly humble roots for somebody to build something like that, which is highly differentiated in a zone where you had MNCs and people with lots of money, etc. at it. I think that to me is the true spirit of entrepreneurship, and I'm therefore a big fan.
Amrish, I love that you're a rider and you do all these cross-country rides on your motorbike to rejuvenate yourself. I loved having you on the show, and hats off to you for being one of the first non-essential businesses to restart your supply and delivery chain. That's something that needs to be emphasized as early as mid-May, which means you really think on your feet. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here.
So, my dear listeners and viewers, it's wonderful that we managed to get in a fair share of lifestyle along with the business stuff with Amrish, like we do with all our CEOs. I, for one, am very impressed with good processes and practices, and they ensure that if something goes wrong and it's our fault, we're able to fix it. And that's the one thing that Pepperfry does so right, along with the things that Amrish mentions. All companies should aim at doing that. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you keep listening to some great radio and podcasts. Build that habit and come back next week for another awesome episode. Just some credits. Minding My Business, the CEO story, is back with a captain of the industry every week, somebody who's been a pathbreaker. You can catch us on 94.3 Radio 1 on radio in FM around the country and on HT Smartcast in podcast form over all major streaming platforms. This is a Radio 1 production. So till next week, it's bye from me, Rishi K, and my co-host, CEO of Fever FM Radio 1, Ramesh Menon, shall be back with me. Cheers.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss out on more content.